If you were born before 1955, stop scrolling for the next few minutes, because there's a real chance your Social Security check is smaller than what you're actually entitled to. Not by a few dollars, we're talking potentially hundreds of dollars a month, thousands of dollars a year, sitting inside a government calculation that may have been done incorrectly, and nobody at the Social Security Administration is going to call you to point it out. That's simply not how the system works. They send you a number, you accept the number, and if that number is wrong, it just quietly stays wrong, year after year, unless you're the one who catches it. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly why this happens, how to check whether it's happened to you, and the specific steps to actually fix it. Stick around until the end because the final step is the one almost nobody takes, and it's the only one that actually moves money from SSA's system into your bank account. Let's start with how your benefit is even calculated in the first place, because almost nobody outside the system actually understands this part. Social Security calculates your monthly retirement benefit using your highest 35 years of earnings across your entire working life. They take those years, adjust them for inflation, average them, and run that number through a formula to land on what's called your primary insurance amount. That figure is the foundation everything else is built on. Here's where it gets risky. Every single dollar in that calculation comes from earnings your employers reported, sometimes going back to the 1970s or even the 1960s. These are old paper records, old payroll systems, decades of manual data entry, and mistakes happen. If even 1 year from your working life is missing or shows as zero when you actually worked, your benefit is permanently lower than it should be. Miss 2 or 3 years and the gap compounds. Some financial analysts have estimated that just 5 missing years of earnings history can shave more than $100 off your monthly check, which, stretched across a 20-year retirement, adds up to tens of thousands of dollars you were never told about. Picture a retired tradesman who's been collecting Social Security for almost a decade, never once questioning the deposit hitting his account every month. Because why would he? The government sends the number. You trust the number. Then, one weekend, a family member who works in finance pulls up his earnings history online out of curiosity. Within minutes, they spot it. 3 years in the 1980s showing zero income, even though he worked those years the entire time, pay stubs and all. They file a correction. SSA confirms the error. His monthly check goes up, permanently, and he receives a retroactive payment covering everything he was owed going back to when he originally filed. That kind of story plays out more often than people assume, and every single time, the reason is the same. Nobody ever told him to check. Now let's add a second layer, because if you were born specifically between 1943 and 1954, there's a separate issue tied to one number almost nobody fully understood when they filed. Your full retirement age, according to Social Security, is exactly 66. Not 65, not 67, 66. That's the age at which you're entitled to 100% of your earned benefit. The problem is, Social Security has always allowed people to start claiming as early as 62, and millions of people in this age range did exactly that, especially during years when job security was shaky or health made waiting feel risky. What a lot of those people were never clearly told is that claiming early doesn't just mean smaller checks for a few years until things catch up. It permanently reduces your benefit for the rest of your life. Claim at 62 with a full retirement age of 66, and your monthly benefit is cut by roughly 25%, permanently. On a benefit that should have been $2,000 a month, that's $500 every single month, gone, for as long as you live. This is one of the most common regrets retirees quietly carry, not because they made a foolish choice, but because nobody sat down and explained, in plain terms, exactly what that early claiming decision would cost over 20 or 30 years. Now, if you've already been collecting for years and you claimed early, I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad about a decision you made long ago. I'm telling you this because there's a separate, fixable issue that has nothing to do with when you filed. Even if you claimed at exactly the right time, at 66, your full retirement age, the check you're receiving today could still be wrong, simply because the earnings record feeding that original calculation was never corrected. And that part, the earnings record, is the part Social Security will actually fix once you bring them the proof. So here's exactly what to do, and this is the part worth writing down. Step 1. Go to ssa.gov and log into your personal My Social Security account, or create one if you haven't already. It takes about 10 minutes. Once you're in, find your earnings history, a year-by-year record of every dollar ever reported to Social Security under your name. Go through it carefully. Look for any year that shows zero when you know you were working. Look for any year where the number seems far lower than what you actually earned. Any gap in that timeline is a gap in your benefit calculation. Step 2. Pull together your documentation. Old tax returns, W-2 forms, pay stubs, anything that shows what you actually earned during the years that look wrong. You don't need 40 years of paperwork. 2 or 3 solid years of proof is often enough to open a correction request. Step 3. File Form ssa.7008, the official request to correct your earnings record. It's available directly on the SSA website, or you can call the Social Security Administration at 1-800-772-1213 and ask them to open an earnings record review, or visit your local office in person with your documents. Once it's submitted, SSA matches your proof against their records and credits any missing earnings. Corrections typically take somewhere between 10 and 90 days, and if you're owed back pay, it's issued as a lump sum direct deposit. One important note on timing. While SSA can correct clear errors regardless of age, there's a general guideline that earnings are most easily corrected within roughly 3 years, 3 months, and 15 days from the end of the tax year in question. The older the error, the harder it can be to fix, and the more documentation you'll likely need. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to check sooner rather than later. I also want to touch on delayed retirement credits, because this affects a lot of people in this exact birth range. If you were born between 1943 and 1954 and waited past your full retirement age of 66 to claim, Social Security was supposed to add an 8% increase to your benefit for every year you waited, up to age 70, a potential 32% boost if you waited the full 4 years. What's worth double-checking is whether those credits were actually applied correctly to your record. It's less common to see errors here, but it does happen, and if your benefit doesn't reflect the years you waited, that's a conversation worth having with SSA directly. Here's something else that deserves attention, and it's backed by a real federal audit, not speculation. The Social Security Administration's own Office of the Inspector General found that more than 8,600 widows and widowers were underpaid a combined $50 million due to errors in a calculation called the Widow's Indexing Computation, a formula that adjusts a deceased spouse's earnings record to determine the survivor's benefit. When that calculation was skipped or applied incorrectly during manual processing, those survivors received smaller checks than they were owed, averaging roughly $5,400 in lost benefits per person. The same investigation found an even larger group, over 5,000 additional widows and widowers, who lost out on more than $100 million combined, not because of a calculation error, but because they were never given clear guidance on when it actually made sense to claim their survivor benefit versus their own retirement benefit. These weren't people who did anything wrong. They filed correctly, waited the appropriate amount of time, and the system still failed them quietly, behind the scenes. Here's the honest truth I want you to walk away with. The Social Security Administration isn't some villain trying to shortchange people on purpose. It's a massive, decades-old system built on paper records and manual entries, run by people doing their best inside a process that occasionally gets it wrong. But the responsibility for catching those mistakes doesn't fall on the agency. It falls on you. And the only way you catch them is by actually looking. So before you close this video, go to ssa.gov, log into your My Social Security account, and go through your earnings history every single year from the very beginning of your working life. If something doesn't look right, it probably isn't. The form to fix it is SSA 7008, and the number to call is 1-800-772-1213. If you know someone born before 1955 who's collecting Social Security right now, send them this video. It takes 10 seconds to share, and if there's even one missing year sitting in their earnings record, finding it could mean over $1,000 a year back in their pocket, permanently. Money the system has been calculating wrong this whole time, without ever sending a single letter to tell them.